Okay, so I just checked this morning about 10 minutes ago, and I realized that this was the 50th episode we have of Screaming from the Sidelines on Believe. That's nice and fitting because the 50, it is reserved for special occasions, and that's what we have today. It's one of our most unique episodes and one that I am personally very excited about. I have three people on the call with me today. They all do awesome work, and they're trying to get the WNBA to come to Oakland, California. And if you've been following sports this week, you know that Oakland fans are hurting and needing for a team. So I'll introduce them one by one. We have our two co-founders of this project. We have Sara Brande and Joanie Lohman at the forefront of all this. And then we also have Alexis Gray-Lawson, who is a former player for the Phoenix Mercury, the California Golden Bears, an Oakland native, and Dr. Alexis Gray-Lawson is now the athletic director at Oakland Tech High School. So welcome to all of you. This is a super special morning for me. And if I got up this early, then it means I care.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
No, absolutely. And let's actually start where we were just talking right before we hit the record button, which is this project in general and the support for women's sports across the Bay Area, but not just the Bay Area. We're talking about Oakland. And Joanie, this is where I'm going to turn to you because I know you are a longtime fan. You went to see the New York Liberty and Detroit Shock at Madison Square Garden in 2000, and you've just been hooked on women's basketball ever since. In fact, a fun fact, which I'll just start with right away, is I learned that you planned your knee replacement surgery around March Madness. That made me very happy because when I was in high school, my mom, I think, planned my wisdom teeth surgery for me around March Madness so I could just sit and watch all day. So she knows me. She knows me very well, and I'm just really happy to hear that.
Let's have a watch party that doesn't have to be around surgery for a WNBA game this summer. But yeah, that was true. I got to watch every game with no guilt because I was healing. So it was fabulous. I'm 79. Sara is 29. I think, Alexis, you're 36. Is that accurate? So we're just an incredibly cross-generational project. Yeah, and I saw the Pioneers play in San Francisco in the 70s. So it goes way back. I was at opening game of the ABL when the Lasers were blazing and saw the Monarchs win their national championship in 14 was, I think, 16 years ago. But we've been without a Bay Area professional women's team for 14 years, so it's time.
I couldn't agree more that it is time. And before we just get into all the details of everything, I think just best thing we can do for the listeners is dive right in from the beginning and however you want to do it and just telling me about this project, how everything got started, how you brought this idea to life, and then the steps that you're currently taking to work toward this dream.
Sara, where do we start? Alexis, I mean, we each have a different role in all of this. I can say some of the steps that I'm aware of, and I think each of us has had a different perspective. So last October 2021, Elena Beard was introduced by the African American Sports and Entertainment Group to be the owner, head of a WNBA team in Oakland, and that she would work toward a bid for Oakland. And I happened to be on the call. I happened to get called by Ray Bobbitt, who's the founder of AASCG. And we got in conversation with Elena, and that was the beginning of my interest and excitement about all of this. We had a Zoom organizing meeting. I'm looking at my notes here. That was not until July 2022. There was a lot of conversation, but nothing kind of officially got underway. I'm sure Alexis and Sara were in their own worlds at that time thinking about this and knowing about it. At that press conference, there was sports media from all across the country, lots of Bay Area, especially Black business owners, Black media folk. And Alexis, you were there, no? At the conference. So you were in on that initial moment. Then this Zoom organizing meeting, maybe about 20 folks came with different backgrounds, including like a former college player from St. John's, Janet Roos. That was kind of the beginning of our naming ourselves WNBA Oakland. We got next. In terms of the timeline, the Oakland City Council, July 2021, gave AASCG exclusive negotiating rights for the Coliseum. Then the Oakland City Council in September 2022 voted unanimously to ask the WNBA for a bid. So there's a lot of support coming from the Black business community, from also the sports community. And then Sara, maybe, or Alexis, talk about the Coliseum press conference and how that impacted everything.
So yeah, like my journey into this was a little different. So I actually have my own AAU program. And so Legacy United, and really kind of wanting to figure out a way to give back to Oakland a different way. And obviously being from here, you know, what better way to do it than be present, right? And so in creating that, you know, you have to go out and find funding, because every other team, you know, is charging thousands and thousands of dollars, and most of our kids can't afford that. So I actually was on the very first one with Elena Beard, who was also my teammate when I was in Washington. And I was brought up a couple of times on this whole legend thing by Jay Smith Williams, who I had obviously played with at my time when I was younger. So just connecting with her, I met Ray Bobbitt, and then fast forward, end up meeting these fantastic people. So it kind of just all really collided. And I think the Coliseum was just like it's like a home welcoming, I think, for myself, you know, obviously growing up as a Warriors fan, a real Warriors fan, where it was like Baron Davis and Mike Dunleavy, you know, like when Thunder was the mascot and he was jumping off everything, right? So for me, I talked a lot about that and growing up and really only seeing guys play. And so that really, I think, sparked my interest in sports in general. And there was nobody that was from Oakland that I really could look up to besides, you know, like, you know, you look at Gary Payton or, you know, Hook Mitchell or, you know, any of those guys who are all incredible, but they're not women, right? So to be the very first to come out of Oakland to be drafted into the WNBA was definitely an accomplishment for a whole bunch of different reasons. But I think the Coliseum just brought it all together for me when you saw community members come out and really support it in a very authentic, only Oakland way. So for me, it was definitely nostalgic in a lot of different ways, but super excited just about the journey. And I think sometimes we get caught up so much in, you know, wanting something to happen like right in the moment, which I think is sports fans, that's who we are, you know, like we're very moment people. But the journey really has been a really beautiful thing. So for me, I've been really excited about the journey to get to having that team here and being a part of that.
Yeah, we're not only living right in the moment. I think Twitter has made that issue about 25 times worse. So that's the world we're living in right now with sports fans. But Sara, I'm going to pivot over to you actually, because I know that you were back in Boston, and that is where you kind of had your first experience of seeing that online community could spread like a wildfire. Just tell me a little bit about your time in Boston and how that kind of helped you strategize everything that you've done here.
Yeah, absolutely. So grew up in the South, grew up in Alabama, went to Boston for college, as many people do. And when I got up there and I started to kind of see that there was so much, you know, professional. I mean, Boston is one of the greatest sports towns in this country. And to know that there was, at that time, I started following. I mean, I grew up playing soccer, grew up playing basketball, you know, grew up playing any sport I could get my hands on. But at the time, the Boston Breakers, the professional national women's soccer team, was playing at Harvard at Jordan Field. And, you know, I had played soccer through high school and I was never, you know, as good to think that I would get anywhere, but, you know, it's just a way to come out, to have a good time. we had been organizing this fan group called the Armada, which was the fan group for the team. And so, this was pre-COVID. This was like 2016, 2017. So we were tailgating. We were meeting up in person. When COVID hit, obviously, the WNBA went into this wobble season. And that was really where I started paying attention to the WNBA. I grew up playing basketball, but I had never really followed it. I mean, I was really more of a soccer fan. But watching the athletes of the W come together in the wobble season and really, having to deal with so many mental pressures, physical pressures, constraints placed upon them by the league, the fact that they had the mentality to go into that wobble and to put on, like sport to the best of their abilities given the circumstances, it really like made me pay attention. And I'm sure it kind of woke up a lot of fans around the country. And especially what got me to continue watching the W was Leigh Clarendon had come out as trans and had started publicly talking about, being a trans athlete in the W. And that really spoke to me personally as a trans and non-binary, I can't call myself a former athlete, but trans and non-binary sports fan, to be able to see somebody be so brave and to be so public, it really kind of shocked me. I had never really seen that before. And so it was definitely the wobble season, watching Leigh come out, kind of got me to like pay more attention to the W and really kind of dive deep into it. And I do kind of see myself as like the ultimate fan. Like I'm the kind of person that I always want to be at the tailgates. I'm always going to be there, 3 hours early, 2 hours afterwards, just having a good time. And so when COVID hit and we couldn't be out there tailgating, we couldn't be out there building community in person, my mindset was, okay, how do we keep that same tailgate vibe going online? And so, it just starts with a group chat, a group text, and then it goes to Twitter, and then it goes to Instagram, and then Discord, and you start bringing people together and trying to keep that community going. And so in 2021, I moved out here to Oakland with my partner, and I moved out here in September, literally September 1st, 2021. And then in October, they had that press conference. And as soon as I got out here, I was like, I need to find where my people are at. I need to find the sports fans. I need to find what's going on with women's sports out here in the Bay. And so I was just trying to like keep my eyes open, trying to see, who's organizing out here. And so I was lucky enough. I don't even know how I heard about the press conference. I think I was following somebody on Twitter, but I showed up at that press conference on Zoom. It was all on Zoom. October 2021. And at that time, I'd only been here for a month, so I really didn't know what was going on. I was just here to listen, to show up and support. And I had happened to see I think Ray had opened it up to public comment, but there were some technical difficulties and only one person ended up being able to make public comment, and that was Joanie and her wife, Jen. And so I immediately knew, like, I don't know who these people are, but I want to talk to them and I want to learn from them and I want to see what's going on. But the Zoom meeting actually ended before anybody else got the chance to talk. And so I was like, oh man, I don't know how I'm going to find them again. And then in 2022, was it June or July? I forget, Joanie. It's July, I think, 2022.
For the city council meeting?
Yeah.
One of them was November 2021. The other was September 2022. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, anyway, like 8 months later, we were on, I had been keeping up with it. Oh, so after the ASEG original press conference, I was in that press conference and I was just thinking, what can I do to bring people together? And so with my like fan organizing background, I figured, let me just set up a Twitter account, just start posting, start talking about what I'm doing. And I feel like other people will start to go from there. And so literally during that Zoom meeting, I set up the Twitter account WNBA Oakland, just figuring, we don't have a name, we don't have a team identity yet, but we'll build it together as it grows. And so, yeah. And then I had happened to see in the next press conference, I was there on Zoom. I didn't know it at the time, but Joanie was there on Zoom. And you know how on Zoom you put your little name and your whatever. It turns out that Joanie had put her email instead of her name. And so I saw that and I was like, oh, I got to email her. I got to connect with her. So I emailed her. She was like, I'm doing my own organizing thing. You're doing your own organizing thing. Let's bring it together and let's get this thing going. And everything's kind of blown up from there.
Well, thank you for sharing your story as a personal fan, because I think that is what makes sports so powerful. And especially when you're talking about a team that, a city that really needs a team right now. And that's a whole different conversation with what's gone on with the A's. And then also thank you for illustrating some of the positive impacts, even if it's a surprise, of technical difficulties, because that's going to make me feel better. My microphone was not working before the show, as you know. So, hey, sometimes there's good that comes out of it. This is all positive here on a nice little Monday morning. So I love it. Look, I think that it's really important to talk about this next thing, because if you polled a bunch of basketball fans and asked them where they'd hope to see the next expansion teams in the WNBA, the Bay Area would be one of the first markets that come to mind. I don't think that's controversial whatsoever. But this goal isn't about getting a team to Santa Clara or San Jose or even sharing the Chase Center with the Warriors in San Francisco. This is about the city of Oakland, whose fans are hurting for a team. So, Joanie, I'll turn to you. And I just, from your perspective, explain why this mission is central to Oakland and not any of these other cities.
Sure. Well, maybe the three of us are a good example for the kind of crowd that will show up for the Oakland team, which one of the tentative names that has come up is the Panthers, to celebrate our history with the Black Panthers. But in any case, so many reasons. One big one is from what Sara was talking about, the incredible focus on racial and social justice within the WNBA, and how Oakland is a perfect match for that. The work, our history of work in racial justice, the incredibly engaged Black community here. 80% of the athletes, I think, within the WNBA are Black. The queer community here, LGBTQ folk in the WNBA are now celebrated. The wives come. I mean, the whole saga with Brittany Griner, which is a whole nother story within the WNBA to hold. But the fact that we have a Coliseum that's waiting for something to happen, and there's a history within Oakland of folks showing up. The Warriors were supported even when they were losing, as Alexis has testified. We have this amazing high school program, Oakland Tech, Bishop O'Dowd, Berkeley High, Oakland High. Women's basketball is incredible. If you've ever been to an Oakland Tech game, which I went to, and Sara and I got to watch Alexis be honored into the Hall of Fame at Oakland Tech. So just the rah-rah spirit of families behind their kids is so inspiring, and they will show up. So it's how do we communicate the spirit of Oakland to folks who only see a crime story about Oakland? I think that's one of the narratives that we have to combat. Berkeley, UC Berkeley is here, huge women's basketball program. Another thing that we haven't talked about is just the accessibility. If the Warriors were to sponsor a team at Chase Center, it would be unaffordable to a lot of Bay Area people. And we've already promoted, if you were around during the Sacramento Monarchs era, thousands of us drove 100 miles to support the Monarchs. And these were East Bay people. So the East Bay itself is a regional area that would support and show up. And also we have the transportation factor. We've got BART, we've got buses, we're right on the freeway. So I think the accessibility and the making the WNBA kind of the common person sport, a place where everyone can show up like they are for the Oakland Soul. And I think the Soul are showing that we've got the fans. Those are some of my thoughts about Oakland. But I think racial justice and gender justice and all of these issues jive with the ethic of the WNBA.
I love it. I lived here until the end of kindergarten, so I feel like I don't have quite the same say as people that have been around a long time. Alexis, you are an Oakland native, and obviously you played at Cal. Now you're back in Oakland at Oakland Tech. So I don't know if you have anything to add to everything that Joanie just brought up, but just in terms of, you said you had a different journey into this project than these two, and just what was it about it, rather, that got you so hooked into this and just made you want to get a team to Oakland as opposed to something that could share something with the Warriors in San Francisco?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Warriors, Oakland doesn't get enough credit for like who the Warriors are, like their personalities, their spirit, the way in which they function is really Oakland, right? Like they just kind of like made a move to San Francisco, which, I can understand for a lot of different reasons. But the reality of the matter is like, Oakland is special. And I think even the Warriors still recognize that in uniforms and everything else, to still try to bring that energy. I mean, I don't know if anybody's been to the Chase Center, and I went to one Warriors game at the Chase Center because it's absolutely unaffordable. But I ended up going, and it's not the same energy, like, and the people complained about that. I think, you heard a lot in the playoffs, like the energy is not the same that you got when you were in Oakland. And so for me, I'm a kid that grew up in West Oakland. I live here now. And, I got to see Oakland for really what it was. I think that people bring up crime so much, or they be like, oh man, like there's just all this drama always in Oakland, but there's so many special parts of Oakland. I mean, Joanie brought it up. Like, you think about the Panthers. Like, I lived growing up houses down from where the Black Panthers started. So for me, the rich history, you get places like, the OUSD. I mean, you look at all the athletes, the fantastic athletes that have come out of OUSD, not just Oakland Tech, but just Oakland in general is pretty phenomenal. There's probably no other league, because I remember looking it up. There's no other league in the Bay Area that has produced more Hall of Famers or athletes. So when you look at Oakland, I mean, it is definitely like a pool of athletes that love where they come from. I mean, you see myself coming back, you see Marshawn and Josh, Ricky Henderson. I mean, the list goes on of athletes that come back and they support where they come from. I mean, you even look at like Gary Payton. I mean, he's back in Oakland at Lincoln, right? So it's something that draws you back because it's such a huge piece of like who you are. Like, all of us are very different athletes, but we all have like that thing, right? And everybody's like, dang, what is that thing? That spirit of like working hard and understanding what it means. People don't understand that. Like, when I was there, when I was younger and I was in high school, I got to practice with like Ayinde Ubaka and Tim Pierce, and Damian was way under us watching us. So like people don't take those things into perspective, but like we all worked out together because it was just, you wanted to be in a space of like of just learning, right? And so like my journey of even staying back at home, like a big piece of that was like, why go, to UConn or Tennessee and create something that's already been there when I can stay home and create a legacy, right? And because of that, you look at, myself, Devin A. Hampton, Ashley Walker, Lasia Clarendon, Brittany Boyd. I mean, the list goes on of athletes that come from this particular area that really is the culture shift that changed Cal Berkeley. So, it's all those things that make these places what they are. It's the Oakland kids that make them. And so, or even the kids that don't necessarily come from here, but also grew up here because maybe the AAU team was here or their friends were here. It's just special. And so for me, it's always nostalgic to just be back in this place, and now being back at Tech, it's definitely special in a whole bunch of different ways, because I've seen these kids grow up. I know their parents, their parents went to high school with me. So just to see these kids now be just off the charts, you look at Aaron Sellers and Jada and Jayla, in state, they win state championships in not only basketball, but in track, look at Mari, who's going off to LMU. I mean, it's special. It is a very special thing. And I think that if you're from here, you just get it. It's just a piece of who you are. So I'm super excited for people to understand our culture from a different perspective, because I think that so much of the time it's so focused on the crime that happens here that it takes away, all those special moments at like Lake Merritt, when you got Juneteenth, or, any of those things, right? Fairyland when you grew up. So I don't know. I'm super excited just for people to get that piece, and for me being an athlete that comes out of here, for people to see that there are so many beautiful athletes that come from this place that can change the world. So I'm excited to be a part of that process.
If I could validate anything you said with the culture change and your time playing at Cal, I first got into women's basketball because I was a young kid and my dad was very into going to games at Haas Pavilion, or even after we moved, just tuning in with the TV. And I really wanted to see players like Ashley Walker and Devontae Hampton and Alexis Gray-Lawson. So this is kind of a full circle moment for me. I went to UC Santa Barbara for college, and at the time, Eliza Pierre was an assistant coach there. So I interviewed her during the pandemic about obviously the Santa Barbara team, but I had to spend the first half of it talking about the Final Four journey and everything there, because that was just one of those moments where we were in a hotel in Santa Cruz watching that game in the Elite Eight, the whole thing, and then went to overtime, and it's just painful. And then when it was over, I'm sitting there thinking, like, I can't believe this actually happened. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life. So I just, commend you for staying home and creating something that you intended to create. And I can confirm from the perspective of a 5-year-old white kid who had to move out of Oakland, I still just fell in love with all of it, and still do to this day. So
appreciate you.
No, of course. This is just a special treat for me too this morning. So and I actually want to go back to you, because on the role model thing, the game of women's basketball has grown so much, and you've come out and discussed the importance of young girls having female role models. You have the Gary Paytons and the Antonio Lee Davis and the Hook Mitchell. But if you were 5 or 6 years old today, who would you be looking at from the women's game as players you would consider a role model, whether that be who they are off the court or how they play on the court?
Man, so if I was a 5-year-old now, so back then I remember getting into college sports, and really college was the first time that I actually got to really watch the WNBA. I mean, I remember going once where I was like a huge Cynthia Cooper fan for a really long time. I went and I watched them in Sacramento, and I remember us chasing their bus because I was like, I wanted to meet her so bad, right? But of course, I mean, Cynthia Cooper was probably top for me. I loved Candace Parker. Donna Taurasi was my idol because, like, for me, she was my Kobe. So it was ironic when I finally got to play with her. I remember our first interaction and me just being in complete awe of her. And, I think that she gets such a bad rap because everybody's like, oh man, she's so nasty on the court. And I'm like, yo, like, she's probably the sweetest person that I've ever met off the court though. Like, very like compassionate and thoughtful, and really like takes care of her rookies. But if I was, a 5-year-old now, which would make me a lot younger than Chelsea, I would probably say Chelsea. I think she's a great role model. I've obviously seen her grow since she was born until this point. And I'm incredibly, incredibly happy for her and proud of her, of all she's accomplished, because if people really knew her story, I think you can't help but fall in love with her story. She was never like the top kid, like everybody always talks about the top kid. She wasn't that kid. She was a very like low key kid. And even when she got to college, she was still very low key. I think people understood like her brilliance, but they didn't really catch on to it. She was like very still low key, you know, got hurt in the W for a little bit. And then of course the comeback story happens, right? Where she ends up being, you know, the biggest name in women's basketball right now. Especially from the point guard position, right? So I think for me, you know, even as her older cousin, I think you can definitely, I think, respect her story and respect her storyline. But I would say her. I'm a huge fan of Asia, of her personality. I think that, you know, when I was growing up, it was a very serious, you know, you have to be serious all the time to like prove your dominance. And I think that her and Sydney Colson, who I actually know as well, you know, their personalities show on the court where it's fun and it's you want to be around it. Yeah, I would say that those are my top three probably right now. And obviously they're all on the Aces. But you know, like I would say top three right now for sure. I mean, Brittany Griner, obviously, who also was a teammate of mine, fantastic person. I think if I'm a young kid trying to figure out who I'm going to be, again, Brittany's story resonates with me just because I think for so long people made assumptions of who she was. And then I think now we're really getting to figure out like just really what perseverance really looks like. And, you know, I think for me, and I think for most basketball players that know Brittany, of having the experience of like being in her presence and like knowing who she is as a person, and then you see something like that happen to her. It puts you, I think, in a different mode for myself, but I think you then now see her and she is just the way that she's taken this with grace. And I don't know how she has, because I don't know if I would have been able to. It's just pretty incredible. So, I mean, the WNBA, the one thing that I will say, and there's no shade to the NBA whatsoever, but I think the WNBA really allows you to learn stories about these women. And I think that to me is what the spirit of WNBA is, and really Oakland, right? And so that tie of really understanding people's stories, it resonates just not with young girls, but boys as well. And I think that's why we're starting to see more younger boys going to WNBA games, and their families are like, this is the real game. So yeah.
That's a fantastic answer. I couldn't argue with a single word of it.
See?
Yeah. See. Okay. So I'll go to Sara and Joanie for this one, which is you've had a lot of time to think about if a team wants to come to Oakland. You even discussed the possible name of the Oakland Panthers. Now, you don't have to have an answer for this because I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot. And Sara, I'll go to you first. Is there a player right now, whether that's high school, college, international, or a current WNBA player, where you look at them and you think that would be a nice franchise cornerstone if we get a team?
Man, I've thought about this a lot over the past couple of years. And I mean, if we could coax Alexis out of retirement, I mean, but I mean, you know, I think Chelsea is an obvious choice on top of the world right now. Not even hitting her prime yet. I mean, I think she's still got years and years to go in this league. Chelsea would be a good choice. You know, Sabrina Ionescu would be fun. A little bit of a young talent coming out of Hayward. I think that if we look at college kids, I think that it would be really fun to have Haley Jones up here. I know, you know, Stanford, Cal, blah, 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 but I would love to see her kind of be the face of this team. If we look even younger than that, I mean, look at Alexis's kids at Oakland Tech. You know, Jada and Jayla, they are just killing it, multi-sport athletes, just achieving in so many different ways. We got time to work on them, so they'll be ready. Yeah, that would be my picks.
I love it all. That's great. Jody, do you have anyone to add or any agreements there?
I was definitely with Ionescu, certainly definitely with Alexis, should she want to get back on the game.
You get Chelsea here, I'll come out of retirement.
Chelsea,
That's fair.
On the record.
On the record.
On the
I was
books.
thinking Jada Curry. I was thinking some of the young college players like Cameron Brink. I was also thinking about some of the veterans who are Bay Area players, at least like the Agumake sisters from, if they would move back to the Bay to be part of this team. In terms of players that I have huge respect for, I would say Nneka Agumake and the work she's done for the Players Association and all the racial justice and player justice issues. And she's a fabulous athlete. So that would be some of my choices. Yeah. I like Sarah's list too, for sure.
No, it's a fantastic running list we have here. I mean, maybe we can just get them all and compile the most ultimate roster. And look, I will be gracious on this show and say that I'll just put all the Stanford hate aside for maybe like 10 seconds and then go back to being myself. I am really happy to see Haley Jones get in the games right now. I know Atlanta's had some injuries and stuff, but seeing Haley out there, and I think it's a good fit for her. And I'm rooting for Pac-12 and Haley Jones. And now we're back to me being a diehard Cal fan and converted U of A fan. So we're just going to leave it at that. Okay. So yeah, this was, it's all good things to think about. And Alexis, going back to your relationship with Chelsea, have you run any of this by her about just trying to get a team to Oakland, getting her thoughts on it, just all of that stuff?
No, we have not had any conversations about her coming to Oakland or an Oakland team. I think her and Elena are really good friends. So I'm sure they've had those conversations. But yeah, I think she would be excited about coming back home. My uncle and aunt, her mom and dad have moved to Texas, where she actually resides now as well. So, it would be fun to have her back here. I know like our family and our friends and our loved ones would love her to be back here. And I'm sure the community would love to have her back here. But yeah, I mean, she is the ultimate franchise player for sure. And she's super selfless. So I think you need a little bit of all of those things, similar to like, a Magic Johnson, where, their love of the game really comes from helping others, which I don't think that you see really in this game anymore. Like everything's about, scoring or, about getting yours, because in this world, that's kind of where we're at in basketball. So I think it's really refreshing. And I think that's why people gravitate to Chelsea a lot more, is that really the stats don't really show her biggest impacts in games. But yeah, she's always been that type of kid. So yeah, no, not yet.
Well, watching last season was a lot of fun because obviously the Aces have a fantastic roster. And I mean, looking at them this year, even it's like Jackie Young on paper is like their fifth best player maybe, and she'll go for 30 any given night. So, but going back to last year, there was Asia and Kelsey Plum had fantastic regular seasons, just complete standouts. And then in the playoffs, I felt like Chelsea was, and I won't look up the regular stats because I know it's going to be lower than whatever I say. To me, it felt like she was shooting like 89% for a stretch. Like I was just like, what is the last time she even missed a shot? And then went on to become WNBA Finals MVP. So that was a ton of fun. And I think that they have a great chance to go and do it again this year with the roster they have and the coach and the chemistry. So it's all fantastic. But look, I don't want to get out of here without talking more about this project and what everything is happening right now. There is a petition out there online. You're looking for 20,000 signatures. That is the same number of seats as in Oracle Arena, which would be the hopeful home of the Oakland, insert your favorite team name. Sara or Joanie, whichever one wants to take it, just tell everyone rather a little bit about what they can do to support this project and get the ball rolling to create a reality here.
Well, I want to make sure Alexis has some strong things to say about that too, because Alexis knows Oakland better than either Sara or I, and knows the game of basketball. So I'd love to hear from Alexis first, what your thoughts are about how we can expand our petition campaign, who we need to reach out to, any thoughts you might have in the moment.
Well, I mean, I think that everybody could sign this petition. Honestly, I mean, I think that people just need to know. It's the one thing I will say about Oakland. I think people are always willing to really show up when they need to show up. I think it's just figuring out when that is. And I think it's always hard. Like I said, I think we're very moment people. Like they're hoping that it happens tomorrow and that there's going to be an Oakland game tomorrow. And we're going to be at the Coliseum tomorrow, right? So, that's always a hard part. I think that as we get closer to that date, whenever that date may be, when they are here, I think people will get excited. And I think that people will rally behind it. I think it's always just keeping people's attention, right? And it's sometimes hard to do that because, just like anything else, there's always a down period of contracts and all of the very small things that we don't really think about that goes into bringing these teams here. So I think that really is just keeping excitement. I think we're going in the right direction. I think showing up to games and showing people that yes, this is going to happen. Because I think people are more nervous that it's not going to happen because of the A's. Dun dun dun. So I think that people are excited, but also nervous because it's the unknown. And it's the first of its kind here, at least. So
yeah, I agree
if
with
John
you.
Fisher doesn't own the team, then I'm more optimistic about this Oakland team than whatever that other team is that I'm not going to talk about right now because the hat that Sara has on right now is perfect. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Alexis. I think we've learned now. At first, we thought this was going to happen within the year, that Elena Beard's bid was going to come in, that everything was going to move really fast. But now we're seeing it's a really longer commitment to this project. So some of the thoughts that we're having are more watch parties. We had a beautiful watch party at Everett and Jones barbecue, the downtown barbecue. We had about 40 people show up, watch the opening game with Brittany Griner playing against the Sparks. It was a great game, a great audience, and downtown Oakland, beautiful setting for that. So we're talking about more watch parties. We're going to continue showing up there's a semi-pro league called the WPBA, Women's Fatima A's League, that Alexis is already also involved in, that we're going to show up. And I went to one of their Saturday sessions, and I think I got about 30 signatures there. We got at least that many yesterday at the Seoul game. So like Alexis said, it's keeping our name. I think we have this vacuum now. As soon as we can move the A's and that whole conversation a little further off the front page. We got a lot of attention with the press conference. We were on the front page of the Chronicle. We had the whole double green section, sporting greens, that day. So getting more of that kind of thing. We're going to be stirring the pot with the Oakland City Council because the City Council unanimously is supporting this. We just need them to keep the conversation going. Here we have this positive narrative about WNBA Oakland, which could counter all the negativity that's coming in around the A's. So that's some of the thoughts.
I mean, if there's a city that I trust to stay loud, I feel pretty good about where we're at with Oakland, California. So, Sara, you run the socials as well. And would that be the best place for people to just stay up to date on everything?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the important thing to keep in mind is, like Alexis said, this team isn't going to be here tomorrow. It's going to take time to build. But what we need to keep in mind is what's important is to build that community from the ground up. And that's what we've been doing. And if we do that, we can take that community base, that community support, and that's going to keep us going, building for the future, 50 years into the future. And so without that, that authentic grassroots community support, what does your team mean? Your team doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? And so best way to keep in touch with this is social medias. Everything's at WNBA Oakland. On June 24th, next Saturday morning, we're actually hosting a community 3-on-3 tournament. Would love to see everybody sign up and show out for that. It's just ways to bring the community together. I think what a lot of people don't know is that there are all these little pockets of women hoopers and women ballers that are getting together every single week and playing all around the East Bay. And, all you have to do is just show up to a court with a ball. Somebody will hoop with you. And that's really, I think, kind of the beauty of Oakland that a lot of people don't see is you show up and you be yourself. There's going to be people that support you. At least that's what I've experienced. And that's the kind of town I want to build for the future.
I mean, and thank you for just illustrating the importance of community and all this. I think it's really cool that I'm sharing a screen with 3 people who have had very different backgrounds and ways of getting involved in this project, but are all getting brought together on a screen for the same cause today. And it's a cool thing to see. It makes me optimistic. And I think that's what Oakland needs a little bit of right now, because not only has it been rough in terms of what's been going on with the A's, but even on Twitter and online, it's getting a bad rap and people are blaming it for the wrong reasons. And all I have to say is just do your homework, because not that hard sometimes. But seriously, thank you all so much. I can't wait to see where it goes. I've already signed the petition, and I know that I like to say rate and like and subscribe to the show and all that at the end of every episode. I don't even care this time. Just sign the effing petition and go to WNBAOakland.com. You can follow them on Twitter. Dr. Alexis Gray-Lawson, Joanie Lohman, Sara Brande. You guys are all just fantastic. I'm looking forward to staying in touch. This was great.
Awesome.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Go check it out. I cannot stress it enough. And there's 12 teams in the league right now. I'd love to see that get to 16, with the next one being in Oakland, California. So as always, just keep being yourself in the spirit of Oakland. And we'll be back with more episodes soon. Don't know exactly what, and I don't know exactly when, but we'll be back, and keep screaming.